Oh, good day, Chief here. I'm a couple days late for Chief Tells Tales. I'm still in Kazakhstan. And as I said, we had a parade before we started the exercise, so I watched all the preps for that. I would say we had representatives from almost 20 countries. And we had troops from Tajikistan and Uzbekistan were the second or the third and fourth largest. Of course, the Kazakhstans were the first largest and the U.S. troops were the second largest. So they did a parade to open up the ceremony, to open up the exercise, and then that same evening, the Kazakhstans plus various countries had their own people that did like not a talent show per se, but to show traditions as far as music and dance, because they had some female soldiers there, and they went through a lot of costume changes because they basically represented each and every single former Soviet SSR, because back then they were known as like Ukraine SSR, Lithuania SSR, Ethiopia. So they had a costume for basically every SSR at that time, and there's 14, 16 former SSRs if I'm not mistaken. So they went through a lot of changes. Of course, they sung most of the stuff in Russian because, you know, Russia was the number one language of the multiple languages spoken there. As a matter of fact, the Kazakhstans, they kept insisting, oh no, we're speaking Kazakhstani, we're not speaking Russian. Well, what's the difference? We're Kazakhstans. Because, like I said, I went with a female captain, and she spoke Russian, and she goes, no, they're speaking Russian. I've never heard of Kazakhstani. Of course, probably with all the various tribes, because the further east you go in the former Soviet Union, you get more towards the Mongolian races and stuff like that, and then all the tribes. Not trying to sound insultive, but you get that mix. And we also did a competition. We did a sports. We did running. We did push-ups. We did, I don't know if we did pull-ups or chin-ups. We had an arm wrestling contest, and actually one of the U.S. females got into that, and she was pretty good, even though she went up against nothing but men, but she held her own. But I think to save face like the U.S. always does every time we go somewhere, we didn't really want to win. And if we did win, we didn't want to win at an advantage, because we always let the host nation beat us just to make things happy. And then they took us to the major town north of this military base, because there wasn't even a village outside this military base. You get down to the main road, there was like a guardhouse, and there was no like gas station, convenience store like in America. There was nothing out there. So they bussed us up to the major town up north. Don't know what it was called. I didn't look it on the map. And you could see a lot of the Caucasian Kazakhstans, because we were near well, they don't call it a middle school because they only go through like grades 1 through 10, I still think. So they're higher up school. I don't know if they call it a high school or not. So the kids got out, and of course they came around, and they were curious because we were walking around in uniform. Up there we did volleyball and soccer, and it was a hot, and the field was very dusty. The volleyball pit was dirt, not sand. So whoever played volleyball, you got dirty. I mean, you look like a pig pen from a Peanuts cartoon strip. That's what you look like after playing volleyball. And volleyball was really competitive. I mean, because I went over there a few times to watch, and it was competitive. It really was. Plus, we could also drink that day, and some officers did get some money exchange so they could buy some of the local beer. I really didn't buy anything. They made like a barbecue, what they call barbecue. They don't have barbecue sauce. So they had like corn on the cob. I think they had baked potatoes, or they had something. And they had mostly pork, I think it was. And of course we had to pay for that, which I thought was, yeah, well, wasn't too costly, but still. So we spent the day there as part of the sports event. We did all the other sports event like the same day as we did the parade, I think, and then we got back into our BDUs and such, or ACUs at that time, and then went over to the arena, or the amphitheater, small amphitheater, you know, the curve, and for the acoustics, I guess. That was nice. I mean, I took I took pictures of the greater share of the costumes, because some of them I thought looked like they were probably rather hot, because they were no small affair, the greater share of them. They were very voluminous in material. And of course they had the hoops in them, so sometimes the skirts were really out like a hoop skirt in America. And then we got to the exercise. I don't know if it was a lack of planning or not really having enough unclassified computers, because this whole exercise was unclassified. There was nothing secret taught, so we had to be careful, especially in the G2, G3, what we could share, because sometimes what we do talk about, we put a classification of secret or higher on it, depending on the subject you're talking about. So we kept this whole exercise unclassified, to the point where I actually had to use my personal computer that I took over. That was my only means of getting on the internet, where we did. And then the, like I said, the former Russian linguist captain, she taught me a little bit of Russian. So she taught me to say Dobry den, which is like good day. And I got the brief a lot, because we really didn't have any of the briefer MOSs over there. It was basically all the ints, most of the intel sections, like SIGINT. We had imagery, we had HUMIT. So we had most of the intelligence disciplines there, but we didn't bring any per se briefers, the guys that generally combine all the information and do the brief and get all the credit, because everybody feeds that MOS, as I've talked about before, back in my Fort Stewart days, when my soldiers kept asking me, how come we don't get rewards like everybody, like those guys over there in the section that presents everything? I said, it's because we feed them the information and they don't give us credit. That's why we don't get awards like that. I said, that's our lot in life. So I had fun. So I would start my briefing with Dobry den, and then one day, I don't know why, I was out of sorts or something. I can't remember. I think I was maybe tired or just out of sorts. I started the brief, and the Kazakhstan officer, he looked up at me and he goes, "Where's my Dobry den today?" I said, "Oh, excuse me, sir, Dobry den." And then he goes, "Spasibo, thank you." And I mean, it was really, and everybody, had a good chuckle about that. So we had lots of fun. We went, like I said, we went through the exercise. It was all at the unclassified. And like I said, these guys were sponges. They were soaking up all this, because they were still used to the old Soviet doctrine. And as we see today what's going on in Ukraine, the old Soviet doctrine does not work against Western. It does not work against Western. So these guys were like, wow, this is like all new to them. And they kept asking us, do you have books? Do you have information? Do you have anything you can leave us? Do you have any websites we can search? They were so interested in getting what they could to learn Western doctrine, which I don't blame them. I mean, look what's going on. Soviet doctrine does not work. Throw waves of troops, eventually you'll wear out the enemy. Because I heard one time back in the Napoleonic War type formations where you have the line and the column, they say if you send a line against a column, that means a man after a man after a man after a man hitting this solid column, eventually you'll break through because the column will start to shrink in size, because even though you're attacking only one point, you're still causing casualties on both sides. And then eventually this line will break through the column and get to the other side. Of course, that's very costly, but we see that with what's going on over in Ukraine right now. They're sending, what, waves of 10 soldiers? Oh, go attack the same position. We identified a couple more spots, because the Soviets did that against the Germans in World War II. A couple offenses, they would do a fake attack, they would do a barrage, and then they would sometimes send some scouts or maybe some skirmishers, which is a line of troops, not tightly packed. And then, of course, all the German machine guns would open up. But the Soviets didn't care. We just lost a bunch of men, but we identified where all the machine guns are at, and then they would send their artillery to blow that up. So that's still the old Russian or the old Soviet doctrine that they're using over in Ukraine right now, because it's like, oh, they keep finding more Ukrainian positions. So I hope the Ukrainians are like opening up in one spot and maybe moving to another. I don't know if they're doing that. That's what I would do. So we got through the exercise, and like I said, we had a parade, had a bigger parade, because we did an awards at the same time. So they got all the formation, they got the parade line out there, and then they had to bring all the awardees, and they passed out a lot. We passed out some. We exchanged some gifts between the nations, like, appreciate your good help. Like I said, we had 20 nations there. We had Brits. I think we had people from Sweden, Finland. I don't know if we had any from Estonia, Latvia, or Ukraine. I think we had two from Ukraine. A lot of these former Soviet Union countries sent like 2 representatives for this exercise. So we had like 2 of each. And then the trading started. And I didn't think about bringing anything extra, so I traded a few items. I left it over there. I don't want to run get it. I'll show it next week. Me, the captain, and the other female warrant officer that I went over with, we fell in love with the staff officer's little map case. I forgot to pick it up. I was going to show it tonight. I'll do show and tell next week a little bit. So, and we had some stuff to give back. I don't remember what we had, but we traded some stuff back because they asked us for, mostly, like I said, they were interested in our Army regulations, if we brought any extra, which nobody really did. They were more interested in getting information than they were receiving any gifts. So we got a few gifts from that, because actually the captain, the Russian captain who kept saying, or the Kazakhstan captain who kept saying he doesn't speak Russian, he said, what did we want? And we all pointed. He says, no problem. So we got it. We each got a little map case in return. And that's about it for Kazakhstan. I thought it'd go a little bit longer, but I had lots of fun. I wanted to go back the following year, but higher headquarters cut the commitment that could go over by half, which I found rather strange, because we were bare bones as it was. So when they went over the following year, they were even more bare bones, because the major that I worked for, he worked up in South Dakota or South Carolina. I went up to see him one day because we would go up occasionally, and he said, yeah, I'm not even going this next year. And he says, and I was the lead last year. So that's it for Kazakhstan. Had lots of fun. Freedom is not free. And I hope the spring offense ends this conflict, or Putin gets out of power somehow and the war comes to an end, because hopefully Medvedev doesn't replace him, because Medvedev is just as the same frame mind as Putin. So once again, freedom's not free. You know what to do with the vet. Hug him, kiss him, sleep with them if you can.